This is Get Real with Amy
and Christina.
So we are doing this podcast to just share a bit about ourselves and a lot about real estate and trying to answer questions that we get and provide more information about real estate.
Yeah, while keeping it real.
But boom. So Christina and I are both independent agents. We're in different brokerages, but we collaborate in the community and are there to choose kind of community over competition. You might hear some bells in the background because we are at my house today.
We have some special guests.
Yes, and my two dogs, and probably maybe the cat might show up.
It's Christmas.
Luke, no. So we might have some of this in this. And it has been a while since we recorded because we had it planned multiple times, but just life got busy. So
Life got busy. Kids got sick.
Kids got sick, yes. When the kids went back to school, we had this planned a couple of times and just rotating of sickness of kids and us
I'm
too,
sure everyone
right?
can relate.
Yes. Yes. Right. This fall has been crazy for that. So this episode, we're going to talk about co-listing. So that term is used a lot in real estate, but I didn't realize until Christine and I had recently co-listed a property that a lot of people don't know what that means and don't understand why there was two signs on the lawn and that Christina and my name showed up in advertising. So often people are used to seeing me share Christina's posts or Christina share my posts. Again, speaking to that community over competition, just trying to help each other out. When each of us have a listing, we'll just share. And, when there's community events, what have you, we're all trying to be there together to combine our efforts and not duplicate and just try and provide a service for the community. But with co-listing, you can choose as a listing agent to have multiple agents representing and listing your property. In this case, Christine and I both got contacted by the seller, and we had offered that if they would like us to co-list, because they were talking to both of us, that we were happy to do that. So there's kind of some different situations that people would consider co-listing. And do you want to speak to that of kind of scenarios?
I had another co-list as well. It was with an out-of-city agent, which made it a little bit more tricky because I didn't know her, and the communication is always different when you don't know someone. So we tried the best to make it work, and it did work, but it was a divorce situation. Right. The one person had chose me to represent them, and then the other individual had chose someone else to represent them, which is not a bad thing. It's part of our job, and it's something that we have to do. It can get sticky, but when you're choosing an agent that's going to represent you, you're probably choosing someone that is like you and is like-minded. And in this case, I would like to say I'm easy to work with.
Yes, you are. Yeah, I would say that. Yeah.
So we got along great, and it worked out wonderfully. But that's a situation where both parties both parties had someone in mind that they'd like to represent them. And in that case, the two of us came in, and like I said, she was an out-of-town agent trying to sell a local property. So in that case, I had to take a little bit more on like the hard work, doing the open houses and being the face of the property. Sometimes you'll just see, it might be co-listed, but you might only see one sign on the property as well. For that property, because I was the local agent, it was just my sign on the property. Right. But she did have it listed with, oh my gosh.
Her MLS system?
Yes, thank you. Yeah. With her, I was going to say her brokerage and her MLS system as well. So it was a little bit different than when the two of us listed together, because we both had our signs on the property.
Yes, and it confused people. They're like, is this part of the property a different sale than this part? So a divorce could be a reason. Yeah. Oh, here's one of my other dogs. Go lay down, please, guys. Divorce could be a reason. And each party wants their own representation in that transaction. So I've seen it with estate sales as well too. So let's say the power of attorney are two, siblings children of the deceased, and they both want their own representation on the transaction. What a lot of people don't realize too, though, is even if you want, so it can make things more difficult in certain situations. So the agents have to divide up who is going to do what and agree to that on the listing. So in that situation, that seemed, obvious that you
it just
were
made
kind of
the
the
most
local
sense.
agent, and the other agent was probably part of the transaction and communicating with you, but they weren't part. And there's the cat now scratching.
And she did a fabulous job at communicating with me and being willing to come down to do open houses and stuff like that. But it just made sense that I was local, so I would just do it.
Yeah. But sometimes that's not the case. So sometimes the agents don't see eye to eye. They are not getting along. They don't agree what the terms could be, and they don't agree what the commission split could be, because essentially as sellers, you're asking them to split in whatever ratio percentage they decide, or the sellers can dictate that as well too. But that makes it tricky if one feels they're contributing a lot more to the transaction, but they're still splitting that percentage that the sellers are willing to pay them.
Right.
So in the situation that we had just recently, it was not, each party wanted their own representation. We had just decided to present that option to them as the seller was talking to both of us.
Yeah.
And they were transparent about that they were talking to both, and we just offered that as an option because we both live locally, and for that property, it was a country property, and it had, certain specific needs, and that we felt that we could both represent that property. It was also listed before with another agent. So I think we felt like sometimes when properties are listed and are on the market for a while and then relisted, it can be tricky to... Apparently my animals need to stop. Just stop and lay down.
It's okay. It's life.
Yes. It can be tricky to get that property a fresh marketing lens. Because if it had been sitting on the market for quite a while, people, and even though we'd be getting new pictures and new marketing material, having as many eyes on the property at the very beginning when you're the new agents taking over the listing can be very helpful to give that marketing new life.
I agree. I think it just gave a little bit, like, we both offer similar services, but at the same time, it kind of like just gave it that much more, if that makes sense.
We were able to complement, I think, each other on that listing to really hopefully get it sold as soon as possible for the sellers, because it had been on the market for quite a while.
Yeah.
Okay, so Christina's going to tag in here because I've got
her dogs. They're going to fight.
Okay, you go.
That's okay. So so more or less co-listing, it works wonderfully, but it can also not work wonderfully. But we do see a reason why and when it is needed. And like the property that Amy and I were just talking about, the benefit of it was that we had 2 sets of fresh eyes, 2 sets of marketing material, and Amy's back, letting out the other dog. They're getting separated. Kind of like bad little boys.
It happens always when I'm busy,
when you're home,
call.
When you're home and have time, they're probably fine. But co-listing does work wonderfully, and Amy and I thought that this would be a great opportunity to talk about it because it was fresh in our minds, and a question that we were both asked, and clients were wondering, how does that work? What does that look like?
So it's not, the agents are working together typically with co-listing for the seller together on the listing. So it is something, if you are interested in having, for whatever your situation may be, having 2 agents on your listing, you have to make sure that they can work together, they agree, and they have a cohesive plan moving forward. Because I have seen it also go the other way.
Absolutely.
Where I've represented a couple that was getting a divorce on a listing. They just agreed to work together. I agreed. We had like a group text. Everybody knew everything at the same time, very much with communication. Everybody was in the loop, and there was no partial treatment to one side or the other. as agents, we're trained and we know how to do that as well too.
It's part of our job, right?
So communicating and making sure that the common goal is to sell the property at the best price in the shortest amount of time. And that's everybody's goal in that transaction, or should be, in my opinion. So, yeah, that can work too, just to have a solo agent listing the property. Sometimes people get confused if a team is listing the property.
Right.
It can look like two separate people, agents listing the property, and it looks like a co-list situation. But in that situation, normally with a team, it's the team lead.
Yeah.
That is the primary agent, and then the second agent would be somebody on their team that they had designated to represent the sellers.
Property.
Yeah, in that property. So I think that's it. Like just covering on if anybody has any questions about that, let us know. Happy to answer that. But yes, co-listing, if you see two signs on a property or you see two agents communicating about a property, it could be that they've co-listed the property. We are supposed to make it clear in our marketing that the property is co-listed. So when Christina and I were marketing the property, I would tag her and say co-listed with, and Christina would do the same. If an agent doesn't have that, in their marketing, it could just be that they're sharing somebody else's, like,
right,
one of
and
their,
it's not
co-listed. It's not co-listed, just
Yeah.
something that they're sharing to help out another agent and get more exposure on the property.
And I know, like in the city, a lot of times people use two agents to represent a divorce. And oftentimes, like I've heard specifically people say, "Oh, like this is a perfect time for us to take advantage because there's two agents on the property. Let's take advantage because we know that there's a divorce." Well,
Yeah.
that's a prime example. That is not always the case. It's not always because there's a divorce and because, the parties don't get along.
Yeah.
It just could be solely for other reasons. It's not necessarily a negative reason, if that makes sense.
I've seen it before too. So like I had one at the beginning of my career. My mentor brought me on to one of his listings, which I really appreciated, gave me a lot of experience. He was there helping and mentoring me the whole way. But I was able to get my name on an actual listing and
nice.
Be part of it was lovely. He's passed, but he was very supportive and helpful. So that could be a situation too. One agent, even though we weren't on a team together, we were both solo agents. He put me on his listing as the co-list agent. Oh. Yeah, the sellers obviously agreed, and we're happy to do that. But it was a great scenario for me, so that I could learn through the transaction. So you never know. There's different situations why co-list, but I would definitely recommend. So I would say this would be an anomaly in terms of I don't see it very often that two agents would agree amicably to go into a co-list, because if you think of it, if you're asking an agent to co-list, they're cutting their commission by half that they could do potentially the job they feel just as well as a solo agent.
Right.
So that one that you had, the out of area agent, if both parties had felt that they could just use one agent, I would have said you would have been the better choice because of being a local agent representing the property in the area.
Right.
But everybody has their own comfort level. And you just have to make sure the agents, I would say the biggest tip is make sure the agents agree to it and are fully on board with it. If not, I would find an impartial local agent. I always suggest local, but an impartial local agent that neither side knows very well.
Yeah.
And I've had that happen as well too. I was picked not because I knew either of them really well.
Right.
They both had friends or family members that were realtors, and they picked me because I was impartial and didn't have a relationship with either of them.
Right. And just going back to like the listing agreement, when you're listing with the co-lister, there is a form that specifically is filled out that needs to be attached, and that the sellers sign, that dictates what each brokerage is going to do. Which
the responsibility of each.
Responsibility of each, exactly.
And we have new, it's called TRESA, like a new real estate act. So that's a whole other episode. But
stay tuned.
Yeah. With that, it does, we are now required to let sellers know what services are being provided for the commission that we are receiving. So I always kind of did that, but it's now,
absolutely.
and I know you did too, but it's now like mandated that we have to provide that. So that COLIS sheet actually has a lot of the line items outlined because you have to pick who's going to do what in the transaction on that form.
And when we say like who's going to do what, there's like a section for like offers, marketing, advertising.
Yeah, open houses, that type of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
And now there's, with the trust of the new act too, there's like, you can have designated agency to have one agent designated to solely represent. So that's a whole other episode. But yeah, it does come into play in this situation too, because each agent among that form, what items they're going to be taking care of, should probably have a list too of those items to present to the seller to say, this is specifically what I will be doing. I will be holding, open houses every 2 weeks, or I will be marketing your property in this manner. Yeah. So, okay. So I think did you have anything else you wanted to add on that? Just a brief overview of co-listing.
For 16 minutes because we love to chit chat.
Yes. We always try and get it shorter, but it's not happening.
Sorry, guys.
Yes, we've missed some things. You can go into detail more on this topic, but we just wanted to do an overview to kind of explain why sometimes there's two signs on a property, or why you see two agents marketing and representing a property. It's typically a co-list situation for a myriad of reasons.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.